But I wanted to get into this issue of the economy as well. The Bureau of Economic Analysis, this is has just come out with this analysis of the the second quarter 2022. And now this is the first quarter, January, February, March, and the second quarter, March through June. So we don't have, July and August's numbers yet. We're in the third quarter right now. But the first quarter, we actually saw a decline in GDP. It was a small decline. It was 0.6%. It was 1.6% the first quarter. The second quarter, we saw a 0.6%. So the economy is struggling to break into positive territory. But 2 consecutive quarters of GDP decline is the technical definition of a recession. Now, you're not hearing, much talk about, yes, we're in a recession right now, because typically that kind of talk is led from the top down. The president would come out and say it. And the last thing that Democrats want to say right now is that, while they're running the country has slid into a recession. But they're not running the Fed. It's a lifelong Republican bankster, a professional Wall Street bankster by the name of Jerome Powell, who is running the Fed. He was a Trump appointee because he would be a loyal Republican. And I am convinced that Jay Powell is doing everything he can to provoke a serious recession before the election. Now, I realize that saying that the Fed has been politicized is blasphemous. It's just as blasphemous as, 2 decades ago saying that the Supreme Court has been politicized. But, hey, it turns out the Supreme Court is politicized, was politicized, and so has been the Fed. So, surprise, surprise. In the last quarter, the second quarter, we saw corporate profits rise 4.6%, even as GDP declined, which means that corporations have figured out some way to increase their profits. What might that be? Could it be price gouging? See, in the UK, as much as, they're now infected with complete craziness, Liz Truss just dropping the top tax rate for the morbidly rich in the United Kingdom, they still looked at the situation and said, yeah, our inflation is caused by by a number of big corporations, particularly in the fossil fuel industry, but also other corporations. Just, they've achieved basically monopoly status as the result of Margaret Thatcher doing the same thing Ronald Reagan did, was stopping the enforcement of the antitrust laws in the UK. And the result of that is that they're price gouging. Their prices are no longer restrained by competition because they have no competition. Their prices are now, even where there's multiple companies in the same space, like air travel, for example, or cell phones. And I can't speak to cell phones in the United Kingdom. It's certainly the case in the United States. These are cartels, essentially. What are referred to as oligopolies, which is just, a monopoly that's 4 or 5 companies instead of just one company. And, if one company changes their prices, all the other companies change their prices instantly. We see this in air travel in the United States. So private goods producing industries actually decreased economic activity 10.4% in the third quarter, although profits went up 4.6%. I think that you can attribute almost all of that to price gouging. And what do they do in the UK to deal with this? And increasingly across Europe, they're talking about this. They put a windfall profits tax in place, something we haven't seen since the era of Jerry Ford and Jimmy Carter. And the windfall profits tax says basically, you want to screw consumers? You're just going to have to give that money to the government. Might as well not do it. And sure enough, the companies start backing off. But here in the United States, anything with the word tax associated with it not only causes the entire Republican Party to start coughing and sneezing loudly, but it does, a small number of corporate-owned Democrats, which is tragic. And I realize, the good news is that type of Democrat, the so-called moderate Democrats, I would call them corporate Democrats, their numbers are diminishing day by day. in the Democratic Party as more and more Democrats are stepping up and saying, yes, I'm an FDR Democrat, I'm an LBJ Democrat, I'm a progressive Democrat, I want to strengthen Medicare, I want to strengthen Medicaid, I want to strengthen Social Security. We should be enforcing the laws against corporate monopolies. We should be protecting average working people. We should strengthen the rights of unions. We should be protecting the environment. We need to make sure that everybody in America has health care as a right, not just as a privilege. We need the right of working people to unionize and to defend themselves in the workplace against corporate malfeasance and monopolies. We've got to protect our environment. We've got to do something about our nation being awash in gun violence. We have 120 guns for every 100 people in this country. The average for most of the developed countries around the world is between, 1 in Taiwan, South Korea, and Japan, and 20 in most of your European countries per 100 people. But here it's 120 guns per 100 people. And we wonder why the leading cause of death among children in America now is guns, gun violence.